Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your attendance. We all know that you all have a busy life, and so we really appreciate the opportunity of you giving us your time for an hour or so this evening to talk about a very important area for everyone in the room, I imagine, the future of Lake Nasworthy. And many of you are familiar faces. We've talked to you throughout the process, or you might have attended one of our earlier community meetings. This is going to be the third in a series of 3 community meetings that we've held on this planning process. We had 2 meetings in the spring where we were just sort of in the formulation process, and so tonight we've got representatives here from the consulting groups to present a draft plan to you all. It's a very thick document, so I assure you we won't go through it page by page, but if you have the interest of doing that, we invite you to look at our website, costatx.us. The full text of the draft plan is up, and we certainly welcome any input that you might have either tonight or in the future. You can always feel free to email or give us a phone call, and we'll be happy to talk to you about this. Tonight we've got 2 speakers. We have Peter Ravella with Peter A. Ravella Consulting, and we have Rob Parsons with Gateway Planning. And they've been huge parts of the process, from the public input to the market study to some of the planning and some of the abstract work that you're going to be seeing tonight. So we're very excited to present this product to you and hear what you have to say about it. We do have a wireless mic in the center of the room, and we will be taping this so that we can show this on our website and on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to ask questions, give us comments. Please come up to the mic to do so at the appropriate time so we can make sure we capture that on film. And we look forward to having a conversation with you tonight. Thank you again for attending, and I will hand it over to Peter and Rob.
All right. And then it's just tab down. Okay. Well, I hate standing behind this thing in a public meeting. This is a little formal, isn't it? My name is Peter Ravella, and I was on the planning team. Our responsibility, myself and Anna Mackey, who I think many of you met, was to make sure that as the planners put this thing together, that we had a clear understanding of the interest in this community, and they're large and varied. So tonight I hope to show that the culmination of that effort and all of y'all's assistance in this project helped us develop a plan that's workable for your community. So let's talk about the Lake Nasworthy initiative. We titled it from the beginning, I think in the early public input process back in March, it was pretty clear that we had to link these neighborhoods and the tourism or the recreational use of the area together, and I think we tried to do that. This was a product of Gateway Planning as the principal contractor, market and feasibility advisor, some of the best recreational economists I think in the country, and I'm not overstating that. I don't think they're experts. We're the financial analysts for the project. Our firm in the River Studio, a very good water and shoreline design landscape architectural firm. So I think we had a pretty good team to match the tasks ahead. So when we started, if y'all remember, and there's a lot of folks in this room who came in March and sat down with us. We spent a couple of days in individual interviews. And we started with public input, and the planners were there to listen, and we did a lot of interviews. The interviews typically were 30 minutes and sometimes longer. So we wanted that public input. The other job we wanted to do is make sure that whatever we put forward would capture the market or would be economically viable. It's great to draw pretty pictures and come up with great plans, but if they're not economically sound, the community doesn't have a great expectation that they'll actually occur. So as we got into it, there's a complex set of interest in this community, like all communities, and I think everybody in this room is probably familiar with the variety of views that surround the lake. So we wanted to get involved in those discussions and understand them. The plan includes a design for implementation, and we wanted to make sure that when we talk about tourists, we're not talking about, now we don't want to say anything bad about those folks from Midland, but we're talking about people from San Angelo who are the principal users of the lake. So we call that the local tourists. The important part for us, one of the initial things that we noticed and that you helped us understand is that Lake Nasworthy is not just an asset to this town. It's actually an important asset in West Texas, and that's reflected in the ownership and the interest and the, in the summer and the visitors and where they come from. It's regional. Economic development is a component of this plan. We all know that the lake is primarily owned by the city, the property, and those properties are leased. Some of those are now fee simple, but economic development and funding go together, and we wanted to pay attention to that. And last, I think the goal we hoped we got close to, and we'll find out how y'all think tonight how close we got, was this idea of finding some harmony between the neighborhoods, the recreation, and the tourism out there, local and regional tourism. It's a balancing process, and we tried to take a shot at that. So master plan is, the deliverables for it were a master plan based on community and market analysis, a comprehensive plan amendment. So this product ends up being a part of the city's master plan. So it's not a standalone document, but integrated into the city's land management planning process. It includes catalytic projects, and by that we mean things that might actually happen in real life, as opposed to fancy designs. We wanted things that were marketable, that had some economic basis behind them, that may well actually occur. This is not, by the way, a plan that can be implemented strictly by a local government. This is a plan that sets the stage for hopefully private investment along the lake in hopefully in a rational way. And so the other product was the implementation strategy. A little bit about the public participation. How many in this room did an interview or sat down with us to talk about your interest in the lake? Not bad, about 25% of the folks here. Thank you for the time. It was tremendously beneficial. The stakeholders, it's a diverse group. We talked to the folks who are recreational users of the lake, the homeowners around the lake, the elected officials, also the business owners. In all, we wanted to understand the community's desires for the lake and what this land feature does for you and whether we can make that better. We had about 60 stakeholder interviews. We spent about 200 hours in interviews, either in person, through email, or on the phone, and those conversations have continued through this week. They've been very helpful. You can't read this, I don't think, but that's the list of the principal extended interviews. And the lake users and recreational group included the kayakers, the runners, the windsurfing guys. Hello, Alan, thanks for your help. Ross Creek trail riders, the Concho Cruises, the Bass Club, and the Archery Association, which was one of the most interesting things I learned about this lake was about the Concho Valley Archery Association. In the residences, we met with Lakeshore Village, with Robin, the Bentwood Country Club, a couple of folks, and Tad and Greg from the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association. Those were very important voices for us. We also met with the state agencies, Texas Parks and Wildlife folks, their fisheries people, about the quality of the lake, and the Upper Colorado River Authority crew. And then in the business side of things, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, Paul Marshall and Sherry Gray from the KOA and the Pack Saddle Restaurant, and Lee Brown from Spring Creek Marina and RV Park. And then 3 folks from the Angelo State University. Mostly it was the boathouse folks, but we had a naturalist involved in the discussion on birding. So we were trying to capture a range of the community. I think we hit the areas. I hope we didn't leave anybody out who has strong feelings about the lake. And if we did, you have our phone number. If you don't, talk to me after the meeting. I'll give you my card. We would like to hear from you even at this time. The workshops, as previously mentioned, were in March, in April. For the general public, included the Downtown Angelo board. We met with the incoming city council members. Every person who owns property out at the lake, we hope, got the postcard announcing the process and how to access the information and interact with us. I think it was about 850 postcards were mailed. There were radio spots and flyers, and I hope that that's part of the reason y'all are here tonight, is that you heard about it and know about the process. So we did our best to try to get the crew and together with the community. You can't read that, but this is one of the fun things we did in the interview process and developed over time, is we had this aerial photo of the lake. And when we met with people, we talked about what part of the lake they used, what they liked, didn't like, where they wanted things to happen, where they didn't want things to happen, and kept not only narrative notes, but this map note, which we ended up turning into something typed out and will be in the final document. But this was very helpful for us, because it's always good to talk to folks about what they care about, but it's great to do that and also look at the ground and see where it is and know what special areas are important and learn the lake from a local perspective. And that was a working document for us. This is in the report and it's explained, and I won't spend a lot of time on it. Suffice it to say that what we tried to do in speaking with a wide range of people in the community was try to distill down the perspectives that we had. And I think any of you who are in a group, whether it's in a church or a school or your community club, know that when you get a group of people on any issue, there is a spectrum of views that comes out, and you hope to see if there's sort of an area of emphasis that folks are generally comfortable with. This is the spectrum of views that are organized by subject area, challenges about the lake, the assets, the public and private interface, and accessibility and mobility, dealt with roads and boat ramps and that kind of thing. And we put them all on a spectrum to see. I think as a consulting team, what you want to do is try to learn about the views of the community. And this gave us a way to see the spectrum and not pretend that what we got was to be able to sit down and y'all all agreed what should happen and we simply had to type it up. It's not that obviously that way. So this, I won't go through the details, but other than when you read the report, there's a pretty good explanation of that input process. I'll tell you this from the very get-go. One of the things I was proudest about in working with Gateway Planning and this group of professionals is first they asked us to come in and really make sure that the community's voice was a part of the process. And I never know when we're asked to join a team like this whether we'll be a welcome part of the process, because the public input process into a plan can complicate it. And this team embraced the public input process from the very beginning. And the stakeholders we met with played a vital role in what we present to you tonight. How the framework was understood, what mattered most, was drawn in large measure from the community's input, mixed with a lot of great professional planners and designers. So I think it turned out to be exceptionally helpful. We tried to list out what people cared about sort of on a list, and this is some of the things that jumped out, that there was interest in having a restaurant. Some people talked about wishing there was a marina or a place to park their boats and maybe have a sandwich. The park improvements, there was a great emphasis on the public accessibility of this lake and the use of the lake around it and having improvements to the park. And these are sort of mundane things, but they're restrooms, better boat ramps, facilities for the public. Folks who don't reside there but come to the lake to enjoy it was a important emphasis. The special events area, is really the part of the lake that is occasionally used for the boat races, is an area of particular use. So the special events area got some attention. Hike and bike trails were a big deal. And of course, when you think of trails, the first thing that jumps to mind is Gun Club Hill and the issues related to Gun Club Hill, but it's not exclusively about that. There's a trail system around this lake that can be better developed, and we put some time into that. So restrooms and boat ramps as well. You know, we're being selective, but we got to write down what y'all said, and we took some of those quotes, ones that meant stuff to us, and put them in this presentation. It's certainly not representative of everybody, but I think there was a sense that we got, and you don't always have this in towns that you work in, is that there is an ethic in this community about promoting the community wellness and the larger public good, and looking at the unused land, the hike and bike pedestrian trails, things that are important to the broader community, and so that the lake immediately becomes something that isn't a feature isolated to the folks who live next to it. That is an important interest, but it is a broader community-based interest. There were folks who do see that there is an opportunity to fill the needs in a way that complements the city's landscape and the West Texas country character. You know, this is another thing. You know, West Texas has a strong identity. I'm not from West Texas. I did live in Abilene when I was a kid. It's about as close as I got, but it does have a strong identity. And I think the planning process, we heard a lot about that identity and the desire to have the plan reflect that ethic. I'm just going to say carefully planned public-private partnerships. Whatever is done out there needs to be carefully done. And what also came out was this notion of this functional blend of the improved lakes access and the infrastructure for the residents. Look, I think that one of the strong features, and it came in almost every discussion to one degree or another, people are concerned about the condition of the lake itself. Great to think about what should go on around it, how it might be used, what a trail might be, how a restroom would be helpful. But the quality and condition of the lake itself is sort of an undercurrent in all of this discussion. And we have struggled with how to address that issue because it is a perplexing and difficult issue. I will say that there are some folks who have helped us bring that to the surface in a more clear way and helped guide the team toward a more clear understanding of the issue and why that issue has to be dealt with. And I want to just say we appreciate the input we got on that topic. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. Assessment of the context. That's good consulting language, isn't it? Assessment of the context. Let's talk about what's out there. In understanding the lake condition, independent of what's around it, whether who's living there or how it's used, there are a couple of major issues going on here, and they all really relate in some form or fashion to water and water level. The erosion along the shoreline, the sedimentation of the lake, results in the shallowness of the water and the cloudiness of the water, and the water quality and clarity problems are related to stormwater management. On heavy rains, the sediment entering the lake, that shallows the lake. The wake energy from the boats can erode the shoreline. The lake is shallower, and y'all know that you spent a pretty good amount of money in 2003 on the dredging. No, it wasn't last year.
That was the last year on the dredging.
Overtime? And last $10 million, right? To remove sediment from the lake. And then there's the drought and the water management issues themselves. And I'll just say Tad has been most helpful in making sure that these issues were not overlooked in the process, or that we got too enamored and focused on uplands and trails and things like that. Look, we know this water issue is serious, and it is a complicated one. And I'm going to tell you, we didn't solve it in the plan. That's beyond our capacity. We know that the state of Texas is holding a bond election in November for water infrastructure needs. It is a $2 billion bond package that we will all get to vote on, and part of that is for management of water issues, particularly in the drought-stricken part of West Texas. Big bond election. We know that the town has invested, I think it's 120 or maybe it's $58 million on the Hickory pipeline for groundwater supply for municipal needs. These water issues are very expensive to deal with. They're multi-agency. They are regional in scope. The city of San Angelo on its own cannot solve the drought and water issue that you face or the potential decline in the level of Lake Nasworthy. Lake Nasworthy is an integral part of a complicated water management regime in West Texas. So what we're saying is we understand how difficult that is. We do think that the town should make an extra effort, a special effort to address the lake management issues it faces. And the ones you can contend with and can deal with and should plan for are the issues of the sedimentation of the lake from stormwater runoff, erosion of the shoreline, vegetation management issues, and those are things that you can address and tackle. They're complex, and you need the kind of expertise to deal with those, and that's principally hydraulic engineering guys, coastal management or shoreline management engineering, and I think we believe that the town should, as it considers the future of the lake, take specific action to investigate and develop long-term plans to address it. And we're talking about something like 30 years. Sedimentation isn't solved once. Shoreline erosion isn't solved once. Vegetation management this is an ongoing relationship you have with this water body. And it's not something you're going to get from a planning team or a public input consultant. It's something you're going to get from technical engineering analysis and support. And it does need to happen in conjunction with this plan. So an important issue, and we think that the future of the lake and the economics of the lake drive the need and justify the investment in the lake management issues. So it goes together. We believe that the upland land planning process is integral to the water management issues and vice versa. It's not one or the other, it is both. So we think this is the further study recommendation, and how many people in a public meeting want to hear that a consultant comes in and says you need to do another study? You know, it's like the last thing you want to hear. We're not talking about us studying it. We don't have the expertise to tackle this issue. This team is not the right team. We're not here asking for work. But the technical nature of these, water supply and lake level, stormwater runoff, lake clarity, sedimentation, shoreline erosion, vegetation management, and recurring maintenance costs. Where is the local plan for the 30-year management of Lake Nasworthy, technically? So we're recommending that you retain the appropriate folks to tackle that problem in conjunction with this plan. We don't think that is predominant. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't set this plan aside, and we're not saying that just because we wrote it, but because the future of the lake is changing now. How many people know a little bit about the economics and lot values out at the lake? Changing right now, right? The investments being made are different. The economy of the region is going through a little bit of a shift. No one knows exactly how much, but you know, when you read it in the paper, it's meaningful. Things are going to change around the lake. The plan doesn't mean, if we threw the plan out, it doesn't mean that the lake doesn't change. It means it changes without structure. It changes in ways that aren't predictable. It's going to change because the economics of the area are changing, and it's already clear that that's beginning. So handling the lake management issues and handling the planning process at the same time complement each other and give the town kind of the bedrock analysis to make good decisions in the future. The market analysis of the plan, Dan Martin from Market Feasibility Advisors is a Chicago guy. He's not here tonight. I think he's going to be at the city council meeting. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the market analysis, but I'll just say that this is a little bit over my head a little bit sometimes. But they do a detailed demographic analysis of the city and the region. They're looking at population trends, of course, and economic trends. They're trying to project levels of activities in certain markets, what's going on. They want to understand visitor market potential, what kind of investments in the lake area would make sense financially. They're looking at other lakes to see how lake development occurs in other areas and comparing those and doing an analysis of the kind of commercial elements that might arise, restaurants, hotels, and special uses. This is a little bit of the survey. You can read it in the plan, actually. You can't read it on the screen. But this is the kind of the results of the survey. What do people like to do at the lake? This reflects your local needs, propensity to participate, and what kind of activities you want. I will not try to explain it. It's essentially, what do you guys like about the lake and what do you do? Not everybody does the same thing there. There's bikers, there's runners, there's sailboat guys, there's jet skiers, there's boaters, there's fishermen, that kind of thing. It reflects sort of the emphasis of that. I like this better. This is kind of a summation. Assessment of preferences for recreational activity, popularity. What do people like to do? And what you'll see is on the left, non-motorized upland uses. It's a nice thing to remember from the beginning. When you think about the lake, you think, well, we're talking about lake things, boating and fishing. Actually, when you think about Lake Nasworthy, you got to think about walking, hiking, and running, and biking, and camping, and birding, and archery, and disc golf, which together are probably as popular and used at a level equal to the water recreational activities of motorized water sports like water skiing, fishing, drag boats and the boat cruises, and non-motorized water sports of kayaking and windsurfing, those kinds of things. The lake, when we think about the Lake Nasworthy plan, it's pretty clear that at the beginning we're talking about more than the water body itself. And the uses of the lake are broader than what's on the water. And I think that's a good reminder. And it also gives you a sense of the spectrum of interests and how the lake serves the community. So it's both non-motorized upland and water, motorized and non-motorized. So some of the marketing opportunities that were identified, and these are explained in more detail in the plan, the programming of water events. It's pretty neat that the drag boat races are here. Lucas Oil as a sponsor is a big deal. I don't know if any of y'all watched the Broncos last night play the Colts, but that was from Lucas Oil Stadium. That company is a major investor in sports around the country, and they are the sponsor of your drag boat races. There's a very viable and interesting capacity of the lake to serve as this event facility. It is tourism from other West Texas communities is a big market opportunity for y'all. There's not a lot of lakes out here, right? And people come from around the region and will spend a lot of money to buy a lake property on Lake Nasworthy. You know it, you've seen it, the real estate people here understand it real well. Education and family venues is a big part of the lake. Everything from what Angelo State has in the boathouse, the pavilion, the nature center, the trails are all great family venues. Quality of lake activities for the locals, what does that mean? Y'all walk a lot out there and bike a lot out there and get exercise out there. And it's very popular. And there's some real increased values for undeveloped proper parcels out there. As you know, the market is changing. So some of the market opportunities that are occurring at the lake. And remember, this stuff and investments and change at the lake are going to happen whether or not this plan ever gets printed on a piece of paper. It is not as if the plan creates this, or creates investors from Midland, or drives up the market, or will create a person who wants to build a restaurant or build a new business along the lake. Those things are going to come to you. And it's whether the community is prepared to respond in an organized way to those changes. So the plan is meant to give you a framework to deal with what may come. No crystal balls here, no guarantees, but what may come. So this is the map of the planning area, and it's important to kind of know what we were asked to deal with. So up in the upper left side in the Twin Buttes area where the motorcycle guys like to go trail riding and the ATV guys, that's on the federal property of Twin Buttes. That's outside. It doesn't include the airport, so it's a pretty tight boundary around the lake itself. I thought this was one of the most important things that was developed as a framework that came out of the discussions and the interviews with all of you. And it was immediately clear to us that there were significant and important interests that didn't always fit together. So how does a color-coded map have anything to do with what y'all told us? What you told us is that commercial development might be a good idea. It might be nice to have a restaurant, but folks live here. There are residents here. We care about the noise level. We care about the level of use. This is our home. This is our retirement area. So so we think, well, would it be a great idea to put commercial development up in the action sports area or in the nature and education zone, the green on the left? Let's put a hotel. No hotels over there. No stores, no retail. Or in the natural encounter side of the lake, on the west side of the lake, which is pretty untouched, very natural, beautiful. The plan doesn't include putting a hotel there or a subdivision or a store, because there are certain areas that are conducive to certain activities and there are areas that are not, and we're trying to define that. And we're trying to direct or influence where commercial development might occur to contain it in a way that doesn't disrupt the lake but provides economic opportunity for the town. So you'll see the Harbor Village. You see the red little banana there. That's, of course, right at the corner of Knickerbocker Road as it comes across the lake. It's the former site of the marina. The Nature Center is there now. We like that spot. There is going to be folks who approach the town and say, I want to build a restaurant. I'd like to build a store. That's going to happen. We would like them in the town to look at that corner right there, not over next to the neighborhoods, not in the natural areas that are in pretty good shape for birding or kayaking or trails. The plan gives you a framework to respond to what the market's going to bring to you. So you'll see the special opportunity zone up there is an odd one, but it is included in there, and this is the old power plant site, right? It is privately owned. We did integrate some land plans in there. Obviously, the town cannot dictate to this owner what he does. We have spoken with them. I think they were generally favorable to the planning ideas that were provided by the process. But that's what the special opportunity area really is about. And that, of course, includes some parts of, we got the Gun Club Hill, the natural encounter area on the west, I said, the nature and education area, that very big part at the bottom, really vacant out there, beautiful area, nice for trails, future home of the Nature Center, we think, in talking to the Nature Center. The action sports area is really about those boat races and having that part of the lake with the infrastructure it needs to handle those crowds, and that involves restrooms and parking and things like that. So this picture that zones essentially the lake, that separates the uses and protects areas that are being used now and have folks in this community that rely on. The archers are up there right by the action sports area, the archery place. The disc golf guys are there. There's some nice possible trails through there. That's their area. We didn't put a hotel on top of it. We didn't put a restaurant on top of it. We said that area should be used for that type of activity, and the same over in the natural encounter area. Those zones and ideas came out of both the patterns of use that you have now and the combination of interests on the lake, in an attempt to not step on top of those things. Some could argue that you shouldn't have a harbor village or any kind of commercial zone out there. And I guess if it were up to the town, and I guess in some ways it is, you could say, we are not interested in any commercial development on this lake whatsoever, and to all of the applicants who are out in the community who may wish to do something on the lake, or now or in the future, the answer before you show up is no. I don't think that reflects the ethics of this town, actually. The lake is important, but private enterprise is an important part of the lake. The lake is an asset. There are things that would make the use and visitorship to the lake better, both for residents and for visitors. And so having an area that is focused on that, I think, is worthy and something you're going to, as a community, face. And it gives some direction to where that will occur. So the action sports zone, this just separates them out. That's the area down by the turnaround and where the boat races occur. Boat races, wakeboarding, archery, mountain biking, trail running, camping, those are the activities that area we think should be managed for. What you'll notice in there is it doesn't say hotels, it doesn't say Stripes convenience stores, it doesn't say that kind of stuff. It says these are the things that make sense in that area and that serve the community. There are some detailed surveys and numbers as to uses of that area, how many people, why that's important. You can read it in detail in the plan, but let's just suffice it to say that the visitors per year column on the far right compares the current levels in 2012 to what you can expect in 5 years, and they're all going up. We expect the lake to be more intensely used over the next 5 years because of what's going on in the region and in the town. The Harbor Village, this is the area we think is conducive to reasoned, well-designed, thoughtful commercial investment. It's actually got some very exciting opportunities. We think they're financially viable, and it would require private initiative to occur, but the plan would essentially invite that type of interplay with the town. In Harbor Village, a marina. We have a great beach there, which is used by all kinds of folks who come to the beach out there. We want to keep that beach. It's an important free recreational asset on the lake. Be nice to have a restaurant there. If you're a boater out fishing, at the end of the day, a nice dock to pull up to and a place to get a burger and a beer, a nice element. A hotel. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. Why would you do a hotel? And aren't there enough hotels being built for all of the fracking guys and all of that business? The lake having a hotel makes a lot of sense to us. If you can imagine a destination hotel as opposed to something along the freeway, it would be full every July when the jet boat races are going on. Be full many times of the year with other events and activities on the lake. We think it makes economic sense, and we think it is something that can be economically sound in this period of, let's say, added economic activity due to the oil business, which will one day fade, but the nice thing about a hotel at the lake is it has value even after the oil guys go away. Sailing school, maybe a triathlon staging area, a nice splash pad next to that beach there so the kids can get their feet wet safely for the little ones, and maybe some party boats or cruise boats is a great use for that area and gives you a nice mix. It's a corner that is already dramatically affected. You know, we know that the old marina site is it's pretty much a concrete corner there. This is an area that doesn't have a lot of environmental value. It does mean relocating the nature center, and believe it or not, they think there's a better place for them too. And they're, I think, at least willing to entertain it. So that's the Harbor Village zone. And there's more statistics in the plan, but this is some analysis of the participation and the activities that this zone would provide. This is a good area. It's an appropriate corner if you're going to do commercial development in the lake to contain it in this area. You'll notice that in the overall zones along the lake, this is the smallest zone, the most compact and the most distinct. So it's a catalytic site, which means we think this area is interesting enough and viable enough economically to attract potential private investment. And there have been some initial inquiries leading into the implementation of this thing should you guys go forward. There is a detailed master plan, and we did that master plan, I think it was in this room, wasn't it? We had all the designers here and a whole bunch of people and a whole lot of comments, and they were drawing and listening to folks and putting them on the wall, and we got a lot of great suggestions in how this area might look. So this is another place where we want to say that the community thanks a lot for helping us come up with something really, we think, really great. I wish I had a laser pointer, but I don't. Somebody have oh, I can use the mouse. Oh, yeah. This would be the hotel. This isn't a final design, right? This is conceptually the hotel. That's over the water, which is an interesting idea. The retail here, this is a dock. So you might envision here a place to pull a boat, a dock, a nice wood boardwalk, and a store, maybe a place to get bait, maybe a store, but also some retail there, place to get a sandwich, maybe get an ice cream. Restaurants and things like that would serve. Now I'm hoping that folks who live on the residential side of the lake on a nice Saturday evening about 6 o'clock in October would take their boat across the lake and pull up to that dock and have a real nice dinner, a glass of wine, and watch the sun go down. So that's what would be primarily commercial townhouses in here. Different kind of living spaces for folks that want to either rent or own a townhouse. During this market that you have now on housing, could see those being snapped up fairly quickly. Uh-oh. I went down. Let's see. And then these are multifamily homes. The Harbor Village is right over here. There's residential here. So across the road, it's residential. Across the road is not commercial. This is something that the village folks, what's the name of the village? Am I getting it right? Lakeshore, thank you. God. Lakeshore Village folks helped us understand was they like that neighborhood there across the road having a continuation of some residential buffers them. A nice design that was developed. These folks, this is a very interesting discussion. They were concerned about the traffic in this area and how it might affect their property. There were detailed discussions and more detailed concepts dealing with this is not something that can be parked on by the public. It's not a place where people can be. It's for this neighborhood. This splash pad here on the beach is meant to separate the crowds a little bit. These are design features, again, that came out of the detailed discussion with the community, but that is the compact area that we think is appropriate for investment and commercial action. When the important thing to understand is the other parts of the lake are not identified for that purpose. This is a very small percentage of the shoreline overall. And that density and contained aspect is a reflection of the community's interest in the other types of uses on the lake. They didn't want commercial spread all over the lake and the noise and the crowds and the traffic. This is on Knickerbocker Road. It's the main thoroughfare. It comes from the airport. You slow the traffic down. It's a beautiful little section. And the folks who live on the lake can use it and the visitors can use it. We think it's a sensible approach. A little bit more detail about the marina and mixed-use area, and just a nice sketch. Now, of course, is this going to get built? Everybody's like, well, that's really a wonderful picture. How does that happen? If the plan is adopted and the zoning code is prepared, that this is the type of activity you want, the investor community can look at the area and examine whether it makes sense for them to invest. And that's how it might occur. So we're incorporating Merrily Park, the existing uses of the park a little bit, the beach and the adjacent location, catalyze activity, creating a mix of uses, a hotel, 120 to 150 rooms, restaurant space, convention and meeting space, not talking about building one of these, but convention space, retail and entertainment flex space, and beach structure and concessions, a mixed-use area. The Harbor Village Neighborhood Preservation, this is an area where the public would be directed not to go. And there's basically this becomes a private road and a private entry for the homes in that community. When we spoke to the folks there, there was a lot of positive feedback about, gee, wouldn't it be great if that was a nice beach right next to our houses and a splash pad right there? Yeah, we'd like to see that. And the beach separates them from the hotel and the intensity of traffic, which is further up the shoreline. This is a graph of hotel occupancy rates over the last 5 years. Well, you folks in West Texas know, y'all are the red line, which is the third highest these days. Hotel use and occupancy in San Angelo is going up. When we first started meeting here, I think we rented at the La Quinta for $89 a night. By the time we got to the middle of the project, the hotel room was $189 a night. And that reflects the arrival of our friends in the oil and gas industry. And so it's trending up. A nice destination hotel, one hotel out there along the lake makes a lot of sense. And the trends are in a positive direction. They're not going to stay forever positive, but it's not a gigantic hotel. It's a small hotel, nice place to be, 120 rooms, something that is not based on the economic heat of the fracking and oil boom, but a small place that'll be there in the future with a nice restaurant. It's not a gigantic facility because it needs to be scaled to the lake. This nature and education area is on the west side of the lake, goes on the top and the bottom of the lake. This is where we have the archers and the disc golf, and we think the Nature Center would be great down here. Nature Center relocated, potential partnership with Texas Zoo. There's actually been some interest in doing that, which means the Nature Center would have a component of maybe a petting zoo or some other expanded facilities in that area. There's a lot of space there, undeveloped down here. Great place for the Nature Center and something that would be more interesting and compelling, and this is a great spot for that. Family Entertainment Center has been discussed, which really has to do with small improvements where you take the kids, and we're not talking about a mall. We're talking about maybe putt-putt golf or other some low-density entertainment things for families. There's a Nature Center concept on where it would be located, and these discussions did involve our friends who own the Nature Center. So I think it's not a final or anything, but the idea of the building and the Nature Center, and possibly some additional camping in that area. It's next to the event zone where the boats go, the boat races, a chance to expand the capacity for camping around the lake for those events, because you're going to have them. You're having them now. They're getting more popular. It's a low-density accommodation for them that doesn't involve building a bunch of structures for that or commercializing the area. Special opportunity zone, walking, jogging in the bike trail, windsurfing, possible zip line. There were some interesting things from the public about being up on the hill and having a zip line down. Over on the power plant site itself, there could be commercial there. It's not adjacent to the lake, as you know, not immediately on the water, and separated really from the residential areas by the hill itself. Possibly a hotel there, residential development in that area, expanded neighborhoods, and some commercial and retail along Knickerbocker. This is a private area again, but what the zoning and the planning can do is direct the use of that, or at least say we are perfectly comfortable with these types of things in this area. And so that's what we think is the special opportunity zone. There's also statistical analysis of the needs for these things in the plan. We think it's justified. The walking and bike riding and jogging in this community are surprisingly high for a pretty hot part of Texas. Folks get out in the heat, and it's very popular on Gun Club Hill. And this is the area where that problem has to be solved. And I think we did not solve this problem. We didn't negotiate a trail design. Wasn't part of our package to actually get into it that far. Suffice it to say, in the community discussion, it is clear that at some point in time there must be a separation of vehicles and kids and bikes and strollers and runners. This is surprisingly actually not uncommon. When I work a lot on the state of Texas shoreline, where there's vehicles on the beach and kids with beach balls and soccer balls running along the same place where the cars are driving, it always makes everybody's heart sink a little bit, because you know there will be a day when somebody's not paying attention and something horrible happens. So eventually the town has got to come to a resolution. I don't think this is intractable. I think it's passionate discussion. I don't think the town can legislate away the interest of walkers and bikers and riders. I don't think we can pretend that there isn't a demand for this stuff, because there is. But at some point, there is a trail, and that trail is not the road. And that trail mimics the pattern in the place. There's parking for this stuff in the right location. It is solvable. I truly am optimistic that this can be solved. And it does need to be, it's probably one of the issues of greatest, I would say, tension in the lake area is around this. And the tension is justifiable because of the demand for this, the conflict with vehicles, and there is a resolution. And that's what I want y'all to know is, I think, in our opinion, you have reason to be optimistic that we can separate and find a way to build a trail that is great to be on and wonderful as the road and not the road. West Texans are pretty good problem solvers, and I'm sure that can be done. The power plant site is a potential catalytic site. Activation of a previously dormant parcel. It's a great piece of property. There's a canal there. There's a possibility of some water feature there. There's a possibility of a hotel. This is where it's truly private. Investment, neighborhood, retail, commercial along Knickerbocker makes sense. Some residential toward the back of that parcel is great, because in the backside of that parcel you get closer to Hot Slough Park, and you're closer to the lake, and it makes sense back there. There was a lot of discussion about a potential heritage interpretive center there. That was debated and discussed at length. But there's a site plan for this, a conceptual site plan. And I think this is kind of a sketch of a potential relationship of uses. Very hard to read, but is readable when you pull up the plan on your computer. And I'd encourage you to do so. And this is one where the owner of that property has had some initial discussions with the planning team about the site. So hard to know where those go, but interpretive center and a hotel possibly. It could be a great piece of property. It could be a real asset there and economically sound. The natural encounter zone really is keeping what is the east side of the lake essentially in its very natural state it is now. It's beautiful. It's a great birding area. It's got potential for non-motorized watercraft. It's kind of got some intricate waterways back there. It's an interesting area. It's also used by the jet ski guys quite a bit, so it's got some potential. issues between the two, but we like this area. And what it means when we say natural encounter is you won't see a hotel plan there. You won't see a stripes and big road improvements and density and commercial activity. What we see there is a place where it's a little quieter in that side of the lake and should stay that way. Birding, fishing, kayaking, canoeing there, that could mean small launches. It could be in some improvements to water access and trails over there. Low density, lower cost. Great place for folks who don't want to be over at the jet boat races but want to be in a little quieter cul-de-sac of the lake. Again, there's a statistical analysis of whether this is something people care about, and I think, as you know here, people do care about kayaking and windsurfing and non-motorized water sports and birding. It's actually a pretty powerful component and could be a great part of the lake. It could be the site of the birding center, and this is an interesting catalytic project. The old fish hatchery over there site, which was abandoned not too long ago, I think in the last 15 years. Interesting little site, though. Could be rewatered, and we looked at possibility of doing that and having a birding center there and some elevated trails in that area. It would make it's such a natural area. It's pretty beautiful. Could be very interesting to see if we can reclaim that site, and it's not an expensive, intense development. There are some beautiful birding nature centers all along the Texas coast. I don't know if anybody's been to the birding center at South Padre, which is really wonderful. There are some really great examples of this. It's a great activity in the fall and in the winter when a lot of folks aren't out at the lake because you're on the flyway. So implementation strategy, we really liked what all of the town had done some great work on its trail plan, in your comp plan, the integrated trail plan that we incorporated into our plan. Excellent, well done, chances for new trailheads and trail improvements. The reason we like trails, at least that I do, because I write a lot of trail grants and we fund a lot of trails, is there's a really good state grant program for trails. It happens to have some federal funding that's steady from a dedicated source, and Parks and Wildlife runs a really good trail program, and it's a pretty big trail network that could be out there. The Gun Club Hill Trail, at some point the cars and the people are not on the same piece of ground. That's basically what it comes down to. Perhaps a 5-foot by 8-foot wide improved pedestrian way. The details of that have not been worked out. The city, I think, already understands at some point in time this needs to happen. The details do need to be worked out. We do think there is a way for people to enjoy walking on that shoreline in that part of the lake, and for people to come and go to their homes in a car and not have the fear of running somebody over. We do think that's possible. The specific arrangement of the trail, I'm sure, will be the subject of much more discussion in the community, but there's an answer. There's an answer. So in this area that we're talking about, high impact, low cost investments, we're looking at, this is over near the archery site, which is on the north side of the lake, kind of the northwest side. And it's also the area of the disc golf course. But it wouldn't be hard to put some bathrooms there and some parking. You know, the folks that do the archery and the disc golfers, they don't have any place to park. They're along the road, or they're back in the archery area. There aren't any restrooms there. It's a great area for light recreational use. It should be retained for that purpose and improved for that purpose. So some parking and some restroom facilities could be done not too expensively. So existing city parks, existing residential, potential commercial. What this is meant to reflect is to put this in context, y'all. I know there's a lot of concern about the town trying to maybe monetize the lake or impose a bunch of fees, or isn't this all about money, and aren't you trying to drive development No, it's not. The red areas are the only areas we've identified that we think are appropriate for commercial investment, and that is the abandoned power plant site in the little corner right at the Knickerbocker Bridge there, which we call Harbor Village. Those areas make sense for some investors. We're not talking about An expansive amount of, we're talking about a nice hotel, about 150, 120 rooms, a restaurant there, a marina to park your boat, some retail, and maybe some upgraded housing that can buffer against the existing neighborhood. It makes a lot of sense to put it right there. And you'll notice it's pretty much as far away as you can be from the neighbors on the north side of the lake. It's meant to accommodate what we heard, that, yeah, we like the economic opportunity. We'd like to have a restaurant, but we don't want a blizzard of things all over on top of us in our neighborhood. It's not. It'd be great on a Sunday to play a round of golf and get in your boat and go across the lake and have a drink and have a little dinner with your wife. We think that actually would be an amenity to the community and to the folks who live there if it's contained, nicely designed, and integrated into the neighborhoods around the lake. And we do think that that's economically interesting enough that some private investors would take a hard look at it. So the implementation strategy now, if it were adopted, and this will go before the council on the 5th of November, we want to try to identify the partnership structures. In other words, if there were a private investor interested, what is the partnership structure that makes the most sense for the town? One of the great strengths of Gateway Planning is their experience with private sector investors as part of community planning. They have a great reputation, have done a lot of great projects. So actually kind of dipping into that partnership structure is good. What special districts, if any, should be developed to manage the development around the lake consistent with the principles of the plan. You got to control what comes forward, promoting the catalytic projects, zoning regulatory approach. There will be, if it were adopted, the city could then implement the zoning that would sort of protect the existing areas of the lake from incompatible uses with these zones. So it gives you a framework to work from. We do think the town needs this innovative erosion control really should say the lake management issues need to be tackled. And if we can help you sort out how to get that process underway, we strongly do recommend, and we've elevated it to the beginning of the report to really tackle that. And Knickerbocker is the area right there at the curve that we think is worthy of a lot of attention. So possibly adopting the plan depends on what your council chooses to do and the people in the community choose to support. But a proposed comprehensive plan amendment, so it's not sitting out in space, but part of your comp plan, paying attention to the catalytic sites and exploring the viability of actual commercial interest there, and coming up with the zoning strategies too. And those zoning strategies, by the way, are part of the important balance around the lake to say, in the area that's the nature encounter area, this is not a commercial zone. So the town is approached that they're not in the right spot because we've got other interests over there, that kind of thing. So we hope it's a positive initiative for the town. And I don't know, game changing is, we'd like to think it would help the town move forward. We want to thank everybody who spent a lot of hours with us and came into the rooms and scratched things onto maps and went through the details of what they do, helped us understand boating and archery and the uses of the lake and the trail system and where the ATVs go and all of that. All of that mattered a great deal, and I hope what we've done is presented something that is a consolidated and respectful of this community and your interests and your uses of this area. So thank you very much on behalf of the team for your time, and I encourage you to get the document and dig through it, and you'll get a little better understanding, but we hope this is enough of a picture to help you go deeper into it. So thank you very much for your time. Comments. Rob Parsons with the planning team is here, and we're happy to discuss as best we can any questions or concerns or comments you might have. I always wonder, silence either means you hate it or you like it. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned something about developing Gun Club Hill.
First of all, you know, that's only like, it's 3 or 4 blocks of a circle that's mostly hillside,
Right.
which is a much nicer street name. And the old shooting center is a really tacky place, you know,
Yes.
overgrown. I
Yes.
don't know how you showed that or if you did show that at all, but I worry about development at the top of the hill because I live about halfway down the hill. And, but you talk about a path.
We didn't put a
possible walk-
commercial, well, we didn't put planned commercial on top of the hill at all, actually. I may have used the term loosely. I think that top of the hill looks like a possible contributor to the trail system there, and we don't see that being a location for a restaurant and a hotel. I don't think that's part of what we proposed.
Good.
Yeah. We had listened to y'all on that, I think.
Anyone else?
You've mentioned several times of the power plant,
Yes.
but also mentioned in the first statement that is privately owned and not touchable. Why do you keep bringing it up that that is going to
Oh.
be a possibility?
Well, it's privately owned. It's touchable by them.
Right.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't fall into your,
No, but of
Plan.
course, when the city is adopting zoning standards that govern, like, for example, it's quite unlikely if the guy said, I want to put a cattle feeding lot there. It's private. I think I'm in the cattle business. The town would say, no, that's inconsistent with the zoning for this area. So the relationship between the town and the owner is one of that. And by identifying the nature of the uses that the town finds acceptable, it guides that owner in what they might do.
have you also taken into consideration the large lots that are for sale on Knickerbocker that do come to the backup of the Lake Shore residential area? That has been for sale for so long, and nothing has been developed there.
You want to try that one? I'm not, the Lake Shore,
Well, the ones that's right across from,
oh, okay.
by the stripes.
Oh, okay. So that would be in the commercial, that's in the Harbor Village area. And you're right.
That's across Knickerbocker.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Once again, exactly where Harbor Village is.
it's, okay.
Not on the map.
Would you like to know? It's right there at
When
Maryland
you-
Park and the beach
Yeah.
and the marina.
When you come across the bridge, and you hit the land and it bends to, that bend is what we think is the Harbor Village. And you're right, there are big parcels of property that have been vacant for a long time. They're not they're not conducive, they're in condition not so good, right? Uneven concrete. And what is the zoning in that area, what we're proposing is this would be an area that would be appropriate. And again, the city through its comprehensive plan sets a stage and says, these uses are compatible in this area. You're also telling the private sector, gee, if you were thinking of putting a hotel over on the nature side of the lake or closer to the neighborhoods on the other side, that's not compatible. This is where we think it makes sense. It's right at the corner as you come across the bridge, and it keeps the beach, and there could be some good things there. There aren't now because there's no conceptual framework that makes sense to the investment community, and the economy may not have reached a point where it's appropriate. This is set up in a way we think that's economically viable. You're going to have a lot of folks moving in here for a while. Townhomes might be a great place to capture some of that residential growth. So, does that help?
We are a resident in that area, so that's why it doesn't concern us.
Well, this is why, you're over here in Shoreville, right? And so when we met with the president of the association, right, one of the things she said is, don't put highly active, loud commercial activities on Knickerbocker. We're right across the street, our neighborhood. You need to put some things that are conducive to us. These are essentially apartment-style dwellings. They're not commercial. So this is not a bar. It's not, because that separates.
But you did say for them to come across the lake and have a drink and go back.
Yeah.
That makes it a bar.
Here you go. See down here where you pull up? No, see, look at the map. Yeah, no, it's a matter of location. See where the marina is up here? The piers, this is where the boat is, this is where the commercial is along the water, which is as far away from the village as it can be done. And that arrangement was the product of the discussions with the village.
What does the development of this area, if it does possibly go forth due to the property value of that residential area?
Your guess is as good as mine. What do you guess? Up. Yeah, I think it goes up, don't you?
2 times 3 times 4.
Yeah.
It'd go after.
Yeah, I think it does too, and
It's predictable, it's nice, it's not.
yeah,
All in taxes.
right. And I know that when property values goes up, that's a two-edged sword. It means if you're an owner and you're looking to sell, boy, you're happy. It means if you're an owner and you're staying, it means my taxes just went up. So we know that's a double-edged sword. Okay.
Just first of all, as an aside to what this young lady was speaking about, on top of that hill, I don't know if anybody's ever inquired, but 20 years ago, they tried to build up there and the FAA shut them down real quick.
Right, yeah.
Did you talk to the FAA and
We did look at that.
realize the altitude
Yeah, we did.
restrictions there?
In fact, we did get the FAA
You can't
map.
build on that hill.
Right, that's why it's not proposed.
There's it's part of the landing strip.
It is, there are clearances there.
Just as an aside, maybe calm your heart a little bit.
No,
You
one
can't
of the
put a building
reasons,
up there.
and one of the reasons there's not one
Or a zip
allowed-
line tower on top of the hill.
I didn't say on top. We did look at the FAA maps. We actually had them, and we had the clearance heights. And one of the reasons that is not, it doesn't make sense to put things up there. We think that hill is a great community asset. It's a great place to see the whole lake. If that was privately developed, it would be exclusive to a few. It doesn't serve the broader interests of the community, and it creates problems for the adjoining neighborhood. It's nice with it like it is, isn't it? So that's why the plan looks like that. But yeah, the FAA question was actually was one of the great things we got, and we did have the FAA actual landing zone maps and the clearances. So yeah.
Secondly, is more conceptual, and maybe somebody from the city can answer this. When we were sold this originally, it was a study. So all it was a study. And it was going to be given to the city. And then the city was going to take it and put it through the planning process and do the whole workup on it. But what you're hearing words like adopt it, we're hearing words like accept it, we're accepting a plan. This isn't the general plan amendment.
No.
This is just a study that
Correct.
may be considered for
It's
a general
not a plan
plan
amendment. You're right.
But can anybody from the city tell me what's going to happen on November, whatever it is? Are they going to have a quick vote and adopt it? Because they've already granted zoning changes out there for the guy to build on the power plant for a bunch of houses out there. So that sounds like they've adopted it already.
Correct. On November 5th, we'll be presenting this for a final time. The City Council has been involved in the process since it's, I'm sorry, is that better? Since the inception of the plan, and so we will be, with the consulting group, presenting this as a possibility for adoption. We have had some interest in this area in the meantime. By law, we're required to schedule those items for dockets and move forward. We can't preclude anyone from filing applications for rezoning and that sort of thing in the meantime. However, you're correct in that this is a possibility. If adopted, it would become part of the city's comprehensive plan, which is a look at the entire city to help guide the decision makers in making those
So that
decisions.
could possibly happen at the next meeting,
Possibly.
without any further study from the city or input from the public to the city itself. They had
Well-
plenty of input to the plan, but that's for a private organization that was preparing a study to give to the city. So the city could then look at it and publicize it and talk about it and go through the whole process of adopting it. Not for them to get it on one day, look at it and say, okay, let's amend the general plan, sounds good, 4-1, away we go.
Well, that's ultimately going to be a decision made by the decision makers. We have been involved in this process for a little less than a year, and so they have been involved in that, as I said, throughout the entire procedure of conceptualization, talking to the public. We've been keeping them abreast of the progress as we've moved forward. But ultimately, it will be the decision of the council as to when and how they adopt this as part of that comprehensive plan effort. So your comments are timely, and I think they should be taken into consideration for sure.
Okay, thank you.
No zoning codes in the plan. I mean, it doesn't include that. What, if I might ask, what is there something about it that you find unsettling or that you're not comfortable with?
Overall, I'm pretty happy with the plan. You didn't talk about anything in the boat ramp areas, what you were going to do with the boat ramps.
Right.
And I live across from a boat ramp, so I'm not particularly looking at a whole bunch of streetlights in a big parking lot across the street, so it looks like I live next to Walmart.
Right.
You know, that kind of makes it unsettling.
We didn't get.
But we didn't talk about those, and every one of the boat
Okay.
ramps is supposed to be improved and have a parking area and maybe bathrooms and bathrooms that involve lights, so the drug dealers can count their money. You know, things like that. That's what I'm worried about.
Well, we try to serve everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think we reached that level of detail, and the boat ramps, I think, are not. This is the main comment we got on the boat ramps. When the lake level fluctuates, of course, the boat ramps need to be long enough to get in the water. Some of them are not, and boat ramp improvements can include that. We didn't specifically design lighting or anything or proposed, but the boat ramps could probably need some maintenance and some upgrades. Another thing that I do for other folks is do a lot of boat ramp grants, and they're really taking existing ramps that are pretty popular and making them functional, and usually they're extending them. Sometimes there's lights involved in the ones I've done on the coast, but I don't know about here. Shaded lighting, and there's other kinds of lighting, and I'll tell you, we do work on this issue quite a bit of lighting that doesn't is not open everywhere. You know, it's contained lighting, and there are specific lights that go only down, and but we didn't actually design any lighting for those. I think principally it was about the length as the lake got lower.
I'm Alan Prest. I'm the windsurfer, and I appreciate the opportunity to have had input into this process. This is where we sail now when we sail in Lake Nasworthy. We're at Mary Lee Park, and we just go into the water either off the boat ramp or just we climb over the rocks right there by the Nature Center and launch from there. The expanse of water is pretty broad there, and it gives us a good chance to have some longer runs. I would be happy if the city wouldn't pump water out of the South Pool at Twin Buttes so I could continue to windsurf there, but
Right.
since they do, Nasworthy is the last lake that we have left. I also have picked up paddle boarding, stand up and paddle.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in having a number of places where I can launch where there's a broad expanse of water, and then I can choose whether to throw a sail on the board or whether to use a paddle. So I'd like to keep access here. I do have a trailer. I have just a small SUV and a trailer, and so I would like to have that type of parking available. It's similar to a boat, hauling a boat.
Right.
And so I would like to have that at.
It's got to be close enough because you don't have to haul it.
Right. So I
yeah.
recognize that we are a smaller group relative to the fishermen and certainly to the landowners and property owners here. But if that could be incorporated, we would be most grateful.
That's a great comment, and that this section here, which is the existing beach, right? That this little marina exists there now, and then this is the beach that exists there now, and so that remains to be public. I mean, that's not a developed shoreline. There's not a dock there. That is the sandy shoreline. So we hope that would give you one spot. But I think the parking, and I kayak, so I know they're heavy. And, windsurfing board is a decent contraption. And if you had to carry it 200 yards or drag it 200 yards, it's a big deal. So it'll be interesting. We should take a look at that and see if we accounted for that. Yes, ma'am.
This is kind of related to that. I'm Mandy Scott. I'm with Parks and Wildlife, Inland Fisheries Management. And one of the things that was kind of, I guess, removed or left out of this area in particular was an activity having to do mainly with the bass fishing. A lot of tournaments are held at that Concho Bass Club that's in this area. It's within that circle. And I'm not sure, I see a little building, it's kind of on the edge of the beach that's kind of in that area where the Bass Club is now. Yeah, I think that's it. And that's one place where right now they have a lot of parking for boats and trailers, and a lot of them actually launch at that ramp that's beside the current marina. And so that's something that they're going to be displaced, and I was kind of watching to see if there was some other area where they might.
I'm going to have to talk to the guy who designed this section, because I think that's the Bass Club still.
Okay.
I think that's meant to be, is that right? Yeah, we weren't going to displace that. I think the Nature Center was going to be relocated to an area that was more conducive to what they do instead of right there, on a pretty busy corner on a major thoroughfare.
Right.
But I think this little gizmo here, we were trying to keep them there. And I think that's what that's intended to be.
Okay.
But let me double check with the landscape design team, and they'll be there at the city council meeting, so you can ask them directly, but I'm pretty sure that's what that's intended to be. Is that right? Yep.
Okay.
We like them. We met with them a couple of times, and
Okay.
they've been out there for a long time.
Yes.
And
Decades.
these piers would be great also for the fishing guys to
Yeah.
use, because
Okay.
those are public.
Thanks.
Good evening. I realize we're probably one of the few remaining communities with water in our lakes, but with the activities that have been discussed tonight, what type of analysis was done on safety on the lake with the kayakers, the canoers, and increased motorboat and jet ski? Because sometimes I call it dodge a boat on the weekends out there already. So I was just curious what was done around safety with the potential increased activity at the lake.
Did we do a boater safety analysis? The answer to that question is no. Not a bad question, though. The lake is going to continue to get busier. And you can expect it whether the facilities are better or not. I do think a lot of folks who work, and I used to be a roughneck out in Pampa, but I know the guys that I worked with, if they had a chance to get out on a boat, they'd do it. And the oil and gas guys, this is the body of water. I would expect those guys, if they have time off, this is where I'd be. If you're a 25-year-old guy working out there, or woman working out there. So I think that the use is likely to increase. As y'all know, our good friends at Texas Parks and Wildlife have a fairly stiff presence on the lake on boater safety. There's a lot of guys out there, and I think we're going to count on them to really deal with that boat traffic. I think it's an interesting question whether the town, I haven't seen any communities do this, essentially limit the number of craft that can launch on a Saturday or have a lottery or something. It's one of those problems that does not have an easy and obvious solution. I think there'd be a big uproar if the town made you take a number to launch, or you had to have a certain weekend to bring your boat. We do have a good law enforcement presence on the lake, and we got to count on them to do boater safety, I think.
I'd like for you to put a clause in there that when the city council approves this, they automatically freeze our tax rates until we sell the property. If they don't freeze the tax rates, no approval of the plan.
Huh, okay.
I'm Tad Logan. I'm with the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association.
Thank you, Mr. Logan, for coming.
Anyway, I mean, we realize the need for the master plan, and I think y'all have done a great conceptual view of things. I think we do have to have the separation. What we're concerned about as homeowners out there, again, is the lake quality, and you address that very well. This lake management issue is got to happen along with the rest of this development initially. We don't want to see a lot of development and things started until we've looked at the the stormwater management, the shoreline erosion,
Yes,
a
sir.
continued maintenance around the lake, which we've got the people in place to do this very inexpensively. We could do a 20 by 40 barge with a track hoe on it.
Yep.
We've got the dump trucks. We've got the backhoes. We could continuously work the shorelines that can't be worked privately. But we've got to see improvement in the quality of the water. And then we have to know if we're going to have water. I mean, these issues are paramount. I understand that you want to see development happening at the same time, but I think until we see the lake improved, we're going to have real trouble with commercial development anyway. So what we want to see the city do is implement this 30-year plan or 10-year plan or a 5-year plan. Let's start continuous maintenance. Let's start doing something with this wastewater. I mean, we know where the hot spots are around the lake.
Right.
Let's put in riprap, whatever it is, some type of filtration system. Like you
Right.
said, we're going to have to bring in some hydro engineers or whatever it takes to determine how that's done and what's done. But anyway, I think as homeowners, what we want, I mean, we've all invested a huge amount of money out there now. And there's going to be 800 of us before this is said and done, probably.
Yes, sir.
Maybe more.
I
And
think right
the
around.
city's not going to be, we're going to be the major element at the lake.
Yes,
And we don't want all our privacy lost. We still want some green areas. We still want to be able to go out in the evening and enjoy the nature that's out there. We don't want to have total commercial areas that distract. It's a small lake, and it doesn't take much for the noise to irritate the entire lake.
That's
and
for
so
sure.
this is something that it needs to be considered. But this seems like we're moving pretty fast with it. I mean, we understand November 5th we're coming in. We could go ahead and implement a plan. Well, I think we ought to say, okay, we approve the concept. I don't know that we need to implement a plan right now myself. But anyway, I just think we're moving fast. I want to be sure these other issues are taken care of. They haven't really been addressed. All I'm hearing is the conceptual development in these areas. We've already got some zoning changes going on. And I understand that the city didn't own that property. These people have the right to come in and request a zone change, and that's what they're doing. But it's scary because I live on Hillside too, and that street set up just for vehicular traffic. It's a minimal
Agreed.
design for that. When we add the 300 plus a day with pedestrians we've got now, it's ridiculous.
I agree.
And they're in direct violation of penal code, transportation codes. Okay, are we going to ever enforce them to get them off that street? And of course, we're trying to move them to other spots, and I think that's necessary. But the top of the hill, I don't believe is an answer. Just the fact that we don't need any more people out there.
Okay.
We don't really want a lot of streets tied into Hillside. I talked to the fire marshal last week, and I mean, of course, I think he's going to have to, in the cul-de-sac that they're presenting, they're going to have to do a fire lane coming out of that and going back into Knickerbocker.
Right.
So they've got ingress and egress and things like that. And you enter in on Hillside anywhere on that north area
Right.
is hazardous. And
Okay.
anyway, we just
Thank you.
we want to see improvements to the water and the quality of the lake before we jump into a bunch of commercialization.
Right.
And I know Carl's working hard on our ramps. He's got us one good grant. He's got a couple working. I think the ramps are a big thing, especially with the introduction of new boaters coming out there all the time. It's going to get more and more.
Yep.
The ramps are going to be a vital area where we need lighting, we need restrooms, and
Yep.
Carl's working on that very hard.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. And in the discussion of this plan, I can tell you that, and it's important, the Homeowners Association has been very active and I think helped the plan. What I hope and I would ask that y'all consider, when you look at this plan and you see this extensive lake shoreline, and you say you don't want a bunch of commercial development on the lake. This is the commercial development on the lake. There's a possibility here to adopt a comprehensive plan that expresses the community's interest and priority that commercial development on the lake be contained in a specific area. That is what you got. And we listened to that. It wasn't like the design team didn't think, you know, you could really do a nice development over here, a Kima-style boardwalk system integrated into the there were lots of ideas about potential commercialization on the lake. The result of the process we got on the water is right here at the bridge. It's a perfect place, and it's very limited. The reason you want them to adopt the plan, I'm not saying implement the zoning. That's, of course, a different thing. Is because this expression, I think, is a great reflection of what we heard from you. I'm not saying we didn't produce a plan that said there is no commercial use on the lake. We didn't do that. There were other voices and other interests, and there's been some really exciting and interesting possibilities that are very compatible commercial elements on the lake that could really make it, and I'm not at liberty to specifically say, that are really nice. But this is, look what you have. You have an area on this side of the lake that is going to remain natural, and the comprehensive plan says remain natural. There might be a birding center there. This whole area down here, nature center and some camping because of the density of use for the events. There's no commercial there. There's nothing in the plan that says put a building or a restaurant on top of Gun Club Hill. Nothing, because we don't think it's appropriate for the reasons that y'all pointed out, and because it's not compatible. I think the plan, in other words, I think there was a real attempt to listen and balance here. And like you say, the guy who owns the power plant site can walk in the door and request a zoning change today and say, this is what I want to do. We can as planners, and this is a normal American exercise. Nobody can prevent that from going on. The adoption of the plan can actually guide the city's response to that and say, you know, along these shorelines right here and back here where the archery is and these light use recreational, we want that area to stay that way. The comprehensive plan indicates we don't, as much as you might want to buy a lot over there and put a restaurant on it, we don't think it's conducive to that area. So I would encourage y'all to think about the advantage of the city moving forward and having identified that 2% of the lake shoreline for commercial development. Guys, that's a good deal. And when a commercial developer comes and wants to put a restaurant next to your neighborhood, you can say, you know, the comprehensive plan for Lake Nasworthy really did not anticipate that use in this area. It's not appropriate to grant a zoning change for that guy. It's not a bad plan. I mean, I only thing I would say that you said that makes me a little bit is I don't think this was about commercializing the lake. I think this plan was about understanding the uses of the lake, trails and windsurfing and non-motorized and stuff. And we're hoping by keeping these shorelines over here natural is that you don't draw a bunch of power boaters over there. It's an area that's a little bit quieter. We can't resolve every conflict, but we're hoping that this plan really reflects, at least the best we can, the understanding of the complex interplay of interest in this lake. We hope we tried to be very fair-minded about that. And I hope we came out all right. It's not perfect, but guys, at the end of the day, on the lake, this is a special thing over here. That's the commercial. That's it. That's what we think is appropriate for commercial. That's it. Yes, sir.
Bill Richardson. I like the canoe, and I like to see part of the plan designate part of the lake just for canoeing and kayaking, where the jet skis and the power boats and that can't go into. Yep. And you know, you'd feel much more safer on the canoe if you don't have one of those big boats coming by and you have to fight the waves.
I'm for that, actually. Okay. That came up, and I'll tell you, the place it came up was over at Angelo State University, where they're trying to teach a bunch of college kids how to kayak, and they're always tipping over. is that makes them very nervous, and the wakes are difficult. And this side of the lake over here, now we didn't propose, we discussed it, believe it, about marking off an area of the lake that's a no motor zone. Now that could be done. We didn't quite feel comfortable going that far, but it really makes some sense over in this area. And particularly around Angelo State Boat Launch Site. They were also concerned about the number of boats and the interaction with kayaks, and they're a little concerned about that. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for the town in the next step to really think about whether they can and should zone off part of the lake for non-motorized watercraft on a weekend, say, on weekends where it can get pretty busy. I wouldn't think that would be inappropriate, in my personal opinion. It's not in the plan, though.
Yeah, I'd like that.
I mean,
One thing I wanted to say to the city officials that invited us to the meetings, my name's Greg Pacina. I am from Angelo State University.
yes, hello, Greg. Good to see you again.
Many, many months ago, you guys pulled us together.
Yes.
One of the comments that I made is that I was really kind of surprised that you even asked our opinion, because oftentimes things happen and nobody asks. So for many, many months, you have encouraged us to come. I get telephone calls within 24 hours of the meeting to not to forget to come. I've brought other people with us, so my compliments to the group who put this thing together.
Thank you.
I appreciate the input.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's always glad to hear that. And I'll tell you, it's not an exercise in just window dressing. We can't do this. We can't do this plan independent of you guys. I mean, believe me, there's lots of great planners here, and if we sat in a room in Dallas or Fort Worth or in Austin, we could draw it up, but it would mean nothing to you guys. So actually, the public process is what defined the approach, and I'm hoping, Mr. Logan, that by reflecting that the zone of area where we think commercial vet is that small, because we heard that from you guys. And we didn't put anything on Gun Club Hill because we heard that from you guys. And we understand the difficulty of the Gun Hill Trail issue, but it is solvable. You know, I would not mind facilitating a negotiation of that, because it's got a lot of details in it, as y'all have pointed out. And it was more than we could do in this specific plan. But I'm hoping that the public input, it was really helpful for us. I can tell you it made a lot of difference. And we want to thank everyone, because it really was a lot of time, actually. We figure about 200 hours of discussion in the community. So very helpful.
Mac Fox. I'm a resident of San Angelo and unfortunately not of the lake. I'm very envious of the folks that have that lifestyle out there. But I think it begs being said that this is just a plan. This is just a forecast of what is possible. And nothing's going to be decided until our city council has a chance to thoroughly look over what is proposed by you folks. I hope the city council will take into consideration that this asset, this lake, which I've known since I was born, is going to be used one way or the other. Yep. And it's either going to be used to where it's so popular and it becomes so congested with people all wanting to do their own thing and the folks that want to live there, that eventually it's not going to be a good situation for anybody. So the fact that we're going through this process says we're looking much further down the road.
Right.
And I'm hoping that the citizens of San Angelo can embrace at least the thought that we're giving some credence and some consideration to all the people, the ones that live there especially, of who I've got family members as well. But at the same time, there is going to be progress coming to this city, to this area, and to have our city leaders be kind of guided by some sort of strategy helps it become a better thing for all of us. And the second thing I want to say is,
Agreed.
on the issue of water, clearly we can't do anything about the water that falls from the sky. That's left up to the good Lord. But we as good stewards should take care of the water that is here the best we can. And the way it seems to me, the better that we make this lake for everybody, the people who live on it, the people who want to have commercial businesses, the people who want to enjoy it in its natural state, the people who come to this town and spend their money, which goes into our tax coffers. The more that we make this lake as special as it can be, makes it deserving to be preserved and deal with the other water issues that this town needs to deal with. So this whole thing plays into that saving the water.
Yeah.
Making the lake its best possible thing saves the water.
Yeah.
Because then every other project that this city is considering for water development and for reclamation and stuff like that, all those projects make sense. Because we keep this lake the jewel that it is, and we can, I appreciate all the hard effort y'all have put into it. It's my personal opinion, I hope the city embraces at least this type of framework. Not that everything's going to go exactly as the way y'all are throwing it up on the wall,
Right.
but that, at least this is an idea. And it seems to me you're giving a great deal of balance between the residents that live there, and I certainly hope to be one someday, God willing, and
Yeah.
the people who do business there.
Yeah.
There are businesses there and businesses that deserve to be there because it's still, San Angelo. It's about business, but it's also about the quality of life. So thank you for your effort, and I hope the city follows.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I want to pick up on one point he said, and I truly believe this is the case. The long-term management of the lake, and we're talking about the slate of issues that deal with shorelines and erosion and dredging and that kind of thing, over the next 25 or 30 years, and I think you have to look at the investment in 25 or 30 years. I would postulate one scenario. Let's say that the lake just develops or happens and that the community of interest around the lake loses its, like somebody comes over and leases the area where the archers are and decides to put a subdivision, and somebody applies for a grant to put, a lease to put, restaurants here and disrupt the neighborhood, and all of this stuff just happens. The bike trails aren't maintained. In other words, it becomes more and more exclusive and less available to the community. When the day comes when the lake needs a $10 million dredging project and the community does not have a stake there and a place to be that they understand and they can share, it makes it very difficult politically and publicly to justify the investment. And that is why we say it is critical that these things go together. If you have a plan which reflects the variety of uses and interest. I mean, when I look at this plan, what I see is protection of existing interest all over the place. I see that this area continues to be usable for trails and light recreation. I see the event area continuing not to be developed for residential that's going to disrupt that activity, but to preserve it, to improve it, to add maybe some camping areas to handle that traffic and things. I see the beach being preserved. I see this very natural area being protected and possibly a site for a birding center. What I see is preservation of great interests that matter in this community. And I see a commercial piece that is the kind of activity that will justify the very difficult investments that are going to have to be made over the next 25 years on all of the things we're talking about, water, shoreline. Now, it's not like all of these things are expensive, but let's not kid ourselves. Making this lake work from a hydrologic standpoint is not going to be cheap, and there better be a reason to do it. And what this plan hopefully does is reflect the variety of interest and the community's stake in this lake, and why they would say, boy, we sure should fix that. That water quality does need to be great, because that's where I go to bike and fish and disc golf and archery and nature areas and kayak. It makes sense to invest. If we don't have a plan, my concern is if you don't have anything, they're going to walk in the door and say, I want the hotel here. I want a restaurant over here. I want to put in a bar here. And the city staff and the council is sitting there with no framework to respond other than, gee, I like it or I don't like it. It's very difficult for the town if they don't have a framework. And I think this focuses the commercial interest in the area that is the best place to go. And it protects the areas that are used by the community now in ways that are great. I wish we could tell you the plan could prevent the level of use going up or the amount of people coming to go up. But there, you know, you and I both know there is nothing you or I or the city can do to prevent the number of people coming to Lake Nasworthy to suddenly stop coming. We just can't. There's nothing you can do. You can structure how the lake shoreline is used. And that's why I think it's not a good idea, in my opinion, to wait. Because already there's one zoning change on a lake-related property happening, and there are going to be more. And you got to get ahead of it. And this doesn't lock you in. This is the comprehensive plan concept, and the zoning is next, and there should be all of the hearings and discussion and detail about all of that to come. But this creates something that protects the existing interest on this lake as best, I think, as best can be balanced. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't things you could do to change it. But boy, we worked hard to try to understand it, and I think it's good. I do. I think that is a good framework right there. And it's going to help you say to some guy who says, gee whiz, I want this big chunk of land, and I'm putting in, a bar and a hotel and a couple. No, that's not that zone. We've got a limited space over here. Let us know what you want to build. We'll let you know if we think it's the right thing. That's the best argument I can make for it, and I think why you shouldn't delay it, because without it, I don't know how you filter the guys who walk in the door with stuff. I don't know what you say to them. I know what you can say if you had that in place. You'd say, no, that's the area where we're trying to keep it less motorized, less dense, more usable. That's a shoreline we want for a beach we don't want. No, you can't put something there. You can't buy up this, the value of these lots, buy up a strip of lots, tear them down, and put in. No, we don't want that.
Yeah, I have a question. Was there any discussion about the city sewer system and getting the houses along the lake out there that are not hooked up to the city sewer system?
Yes, there
hooked up
was.
to it? How far out there does the sewer system go now?
I think it's on. I believe it's over here, isn't it? This part is sewer.
No.
We did discuss. No, where is it? Up there? It's up here. This is Seward. This is
Above the red. There you go. That was going in.
okay. That's Seward. This is not over here. South Seward, right? Right. It ought to be done. It really ought. I mean, that's an expensive deal, but septic along water.
Okay, he led right into where I was
Yeah.
going to go. First off, I want to start where you were, and I'll move to where he is. You are driving with this comprehensive plan predictability.
Right.
When I was on the city council, I'm Paul Alexander, SMD1, former. When I was on the council, I had 5 people come to me with $1 million+ to spend, and they couldn't do it. There's not any planning. The zoning doesn't work for them, and they don't know what's going to happen next to them, and there's city property dividing up their property, and it's a disaster. And so that's why I came to the city and I said, we have a problem. We have no planning. And Bill Butts, brother of Don Butts, former mayor, he said it in a public forum. He said, Lake Nasworthy has had a lot of years of no planning, and it's killing us out there. He basically, this is a paraphrase. He says, we have an opportunity to plan here. No planning is the worst planning. So we're planning. And creating predictability stabilizes your situation where you're at, which drives up values. It drives up investment. Investors invest where there is predictability, where they know what's going to happen for the next 30 years, so that when they put their whole savings into this area, it doesn't go to waste. It builds. Okay, that's the whole point of investment. Now, so when I started out, I said what I want here is for investors to know what's going to happen, and if they can do that, they'll invest. Leading into your part here, what I'm not seeing, I think the city council is going to have to tackle this, is a sort of capital improvement plan just for the lake, because if you only have so much money, and so if you have $10 million, do you put it into road infrastructure? Because we didn't talk about how to get into the horseshoe area, the sporting area, but we talked about a new road that goes in there to get high volume traffic in there without running by the houses.
Right.
Is that where the money goes, or does it go into dredging?
Right.
Where does it go? And so I think we have to think about structuring a priority plan about how to tackle the money issues. You have to have money, though, in order to do that. So you have to get this plan rolling so that the investors are investing, so that the tax dollars are increasing, so there's a reason to put money in this area of the city. You said it really well. And so I agree with that. And so I think it may not be a capital improvement plan because that's what we call it. It's maybe a Lake Nasworthy capital improvement plan. So do I have this right, AJ? We don't have something for Lake Nasworthy. I'd like to do that with water infrastructure as well. If we have the money, where would we put it? And so that'll be. But if we don't pass this comprehensive plan, you can't do a capital improvement plan. You can't do it. And there's so many things you can't do. I don't even want to sit here and list them all. But nothing happens. It's hodgepodge forever, and it all goes to waste. This whole study does.
That's great. The reason I like that suggestion is it is a very concrete response to Mr. Logan, your concern about what happens in what order. And if you had, this framework to me is a good foundation to start with. The next part of it is, I think, the thing that you're talking about, Mr. Alexander, which is really, what are the priorities? I mean, there's a lot of needs out there, including the lake management issues. If you started to put together a stack of what should be done first, you would start to find that prioritization of investment. And, you would hope to see the lake management issues fairly high in the list, but not exclusive, not at one, not at the, not only. In my opinion, the lake management issues integrated with the future vision creates the energy and the justification to do things that are not easy. Because I know that the folks around the lake will say, yeah, if we invest out there, I know as a kayaker, I know as a trail person, I know as a recreational boater or a fisherman or a birder, oh yeah, the lake, I know I have a place there. Let's do something about the woods.
But we can really, this is an exercise until we pass this. When we pass this and we know we have a predictability in place, a structure in place, now we can get into the conversations of where we're going to spend our money, because this is where we're going.
Yeah, I like that.
So how are we going to get there the most efficient way, most effective way? And we're all working together. We're all paddling in the same direction, so to speak. And it really creates great synergies that move us forward. So I do see it all going at the same time. And we talked about speed. I started this in early 2011. It has taken forever to get to this point. I see this thing as dragging on like governments do, and it's just taking forever. This is taking too long, so I don't ever want to see anything stop, because if they stop forever. It's like a battleship, you want to keep it moving at a good pace where you're steadily going forward, and I think that's what we've got to do here.
Of course, we leave that up to y'all, and the council members and the community.
I'll say, I worked for government for 25 years, and one of the favorite sayings was, hurry up and wait.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's with the thing we're adopted, you wouldn't expect, I don't think there's anybody waiting in the wings ready to, say, hey, I'm here to build the hotel. There are inquiries, we're trying to find out if people actually think that's legitimately a decent thing. I personally feel quite comfortable that if someone put a 150-room hotel on that lake, it would be used. That's not a gamble. It's not a giant hotel. It'd be used all the time. People come for a weekend. It would be done. It's a small thing with a nice dock and a place to get on the water and a little restaurant down there. That sounds pretty nice.
They slapped the proposition in there that your taxes stayed the same until the house was sold, because they had people having to sell their retirement homes because their taxes were getting astronomical. And that's going to happen. You already have people at the lake that are having to sell because they can't afford the tax.
It's a good issue.
That's a real issue. And
I'm serious about this taxes business. You already got some people that moved in there 50 years ago, and they're now having to sell because they can't afford the taxes that have gone up 3 and 4 times since then.
Right.
There is a way out of it. I came from California, and one of the only good things they did in California was Proposition 13.
13, oh yeah.
They froze the total valuation and the taxes until you sold your house, because they had people who had been in an area for 50 years, suddenly the city wanted more money per year in taxes than what they paid for the property.
Right.
And they had to sell and move.
Yeah.
And the grassroots people forced this on the legislature many, many years ago.
I remember that. And I think this is a real problem here for real. It probably is true. If you bought a lot out there in the 1950s or 60s or 70s, it might have been, I don't know, probably $10,000, maybe less back in the day when they were leased. Leased, yeah. Right. 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 And now lots out there, a good lot, $200,000 or higher. And so, of course, that what's happening is the appraised values, you know, the market is responding to the demand, and I when I work on shorelines, you see it all the time. Folks who found a nice quiet spot on the water and loved it, and all of a sudden the values go out of sight and they're priced out of the market. It is a real problem, and it is a difficult one. In different communities, we've worked on that in different ways. They've had exemptions on specific property by age and need. I've seen town work through that, homestead exemption, and also rate freezes if you're on fixed incomes. There's some states have flexibility to structure their property taxes in that way. I think a blanket freeze on values, unlikely. I mean, obviously the market's driving those values pretty high, and it would be a case, I'll tell you, the counterpoint to that would be not only are the folks on the lake lucky enough to have bought it very cheaply and then have a freeze in property taxes unlike anybody else in the town, and then have some multi-million-dollar problems that need to be addressed. The politics of that don't work, right? The rest of the voters in the town have something to say about the Nasworthy Fund. It's a very prickly problem. It's a real problem. I don't know enough about the details of property tax assessment limitations in Texas. I do know it in North Carolina and Florida, where I work quite a bit, but it's a tough one. But what you're seeing is the market operate. You're seeing high demand and high value lots, and folks who, you know, honestly and are in tough spots when it comes to those assessed values and fixed incomes. And I have great sympathy for that. And I think it would be great to work on a solution, but
Yeah, the problem is the people in the tax assessment sit there and say, oh, well, you've got property valued, really, you must be rich.
Right.
And they say, you raise the value of the property, how does that put money in my pocket?
Right.
It doesn't.
at all. No,
At
it takes
all.
money out.
It takes money out
Takes money
every
out.
time they raise the valuation until you're forced to sell.
Right.
And that is going to be a real problem in Nasworthy.
I understand. I mean, it is, and you know, the assessed valuation process is a pretty structured and statutorily managed process. I don't think they have the option of simply ignoring what's going on in the market. And I really haven't looked at this, but Paul, do you know? I mean, are there ways for fixed income elderly tax breaks on real property assessment? I don't. We've got limits now, but they're not very good.
65 and older, they freeze the value, and you pay the same amount.
Is frozen at 65?
If I'm wrong, tell me. But that's what
Yeah,
I
homesteading.
understand. There's also some complicated lease issues that they're getting into. It's a whole nother. It's very complex.
Right.
The January 1st, 2017 is a big giant problem for a lot of residents.
Yeah.
And we're working on it. But it's a whole nother issue. You got it solved. Okay, maybe. It takes a lot of thinking on that one. Right. So there's 2 or 3 issues here. There's a Lake Nasworthy. There's values going up, and then there's
and the lease thing,
the
and the
lease thing.
conversion to fee simple interest.
And Rodney's my replacement. He can answer. So I got out of the loop on that.
I mean, again, but I would say, look, that's in terms of that being an actual and real problem, because no question about it. If you are in that situation where you bought it and your taxes are going up and your kids are converted to fee simple and getting assessed value, real. The adoption of this plan or refusal to adopt this plan does not change that problem whatsoever. It's unrelated. It happens to be about the same properties. It's a thing, but it doesn't attack that problem. And I would say by having a framework, you're protecting the interests of the lake owners, and that's what this plan does for 90% of the shore.
I'd just like to say on the street that I live on, there's been a house there that's been for sale by owner. He finances. And it's been sold 5 times in the last 10 years. And each time the property taxes went up by 10% on each sale.
Right. And the price of the property, the lot probably went up by 10% or more.
I don't know. Well, it went up the same price as the taxes.
I mean, is the town raising the tax rate, AJ, or are we looking at assessed value change? The tax rate is not changing. What's changing is the value.
Assessed value.
Yeah, it's assessed value. Rate's gone down, so you have revenue neutral rate review.
Tax has gone up.
Yeah, right. The market does function in real estate. I mean, it does, and it affects taxes. Well, I'm glad y'all came and sat through it. I would encourage you to read it through, and I would also encourage you to think about the value of having some structure. It's not written in stone, but you have a start here of a contained commercial area, no proposal to develop Gun Club Hill, an understanding that the Gun Club Hill Trail issue does need to be resolved. It is not in the plan, but it's acknowledged as a real issue. And some protection of the lakeshore in the future in a booming economy. If it were me, I'm starting with that. And then I'm fine-tuning it in the comp plan process and in the zoning to make sure it sort of fine-tunes to certain things. But without that, I would feel, as a resident on the lake, we are defenseless against the economy we are about to enter. And you know what those values are like. And it will not be long before they're tearing down what's out there and doubling the size of the structures. That's how it works. Because the lots are, they're worth, you don't want to, so you really have to try to get ahead of that a little bit. And I think this is a solid way to protect the range of interest around that lake. You may not like every part, but if it were me, I want that on paper because I want to be able to say to that guy, the bar isn't going here. And here's why. There's the red zone right there. Go over there. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you.